Hello, hello, my girlie. Welcome to Talks with Say, the only late night, thought provoking, giggle inducing lifestyle and girl talk podcast for my ladies whose days melt into their nights. I'm Zahra, your tulip loving, heels obsessed host who, just like you, is trying to figure it all out while finding moments of balance, discipline, and self above else. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Talks with Say and turn on your notifications so you don't miss an episode. Tonight is a very special night. We have the girlie of the moment joining us as we take it back to our childhood, and let's give an amazing clap for our inaugural guest, Miss Fatuma Fadhil. So, girlie, when I tell you Miss Fadhil works her ass off, she works her ass off. As we all know, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is the last of our 3 episodes dedicated to mental health. And as such, we have to take it back. We have to take it back to re-meet the baby girls that we were when we were kids. There's this quote that our past shapes our present. And as of late, there's been more and more talk, normalization, and popularity about our inner child. But before we actually start talking about that, I want Miss Fadhil to introduce herself.
Hi, so yes, I am Fatuma Fadhil. I am a Kenyan Sudanese woman, Muslim woman. I also am a 7th grade math teacher. I graduated SDSU with my bachelors in education, and I'm currently working on my master's in education. Also, the co-founder of AOY, which is Abundance of Youth, which is a nonprofit agency that actually shelters all different types of mediums of art, and we have super cool exhibitions annually, and working on super cool projects for this month, next year, and so on. I'm also the founder of the Uma Collection, which is a digital media and magazine collection. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Yay! Fatuma, I'm going to give you the floor, and to kick off our time tonight, in 5 words only, complete this letter to younger Fatuma and explain why. Dear me.
So 5 words only?
In 5 words only.
That is so hard. Dear me. Confident. Beautiful. Wow. Dedicated. 3. Loyal. And courageous.
I agree. Why that letter? Why those 5 words?
I mean, if I'm speaking to my younger self, I have to start with telling her that she is confident. I feel like when I was younger, I wasn't as confident as I am now. And courageous, like those 2 especially, confident and courageous, just because taking the leap on yourself wasn't my forte, wasn't my way of doing things. I kind of was definitely like sheltered and very shied away from the spotlight all the time. So those words actually just resonate with like things that I would want to tell her that we're doing now.
So you mentioned being courageous and you know how when you were younger it was nothing like that, and now that you're an adult you're much more courageous. So in being courageous, how did that transition happen compared to your younger self to your adult self now, especially a time where social media is so prevalent and more and more young girls, young people are on social media.
Yes.
There's this trend of like comparing yourself and wanting to maybe have the life that you see on the internet, thinking that this person has it really good, so I have to do that. And we know the effects that it has on younger kids, and it's starting from like 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds. They're seeing that, and so to me, I see it as something that just reinforces low self-esteem. So for you, how did you transition from I'm a young girl, I'm a little girl, younger Fatuma is not confident, to adult Fatuma being, secure and confident in who she is?
Well, I mean, just to, piggyback on what you were saying about social media, I mean, younger me, I was obsessed with the digital world. I loved watching shows like Gossip Girl, America's Next Top Model. Like I was obsessed with that type of lifestyle and that type of like way of living. And I even like was introduced to like Tumblr and MySpace when I was younger. So I mean, I didn't have my accounts until I was like in middle school, but I still was like aware of this like digital world. I loved YouTube. So like that was kind of like my standard. That's like, I want to do that when I'm older. But I didn't feel like I could, because I mean, I'm looking at all this media and there was no representation of me, right? Like immigrant child, like with this type of story, like I haven't heard it before. So keeping that, I guess, in the back of my mind, like pinpointed, and like going through like middle school and like really discovering like actual social media. I got my first like Instagram when I was like in high school, and I mean solely because I loved like photography. I loved going on walks and like going around my neighborhood when I bike and just like take photos, go thrifting. I really liked that vibe. So I guess I built confidence in that, in the things that I loved. And I was actually just talking to my sister about this. Like, I am currently living like what I was looking at, and even in a bigger scale. Like I was so determined to be a YouTuber, so determined to be like a content creator. And I wanted to kind of share my view and my point of view of that, you know, of like living as like a young Black Muslim immigrant child and just a young teen. And I think I've done a good job on sharing my story with the world, and I'm continuing doing that. But yeah, I feel like I've hit a milestone in the transition to being the not so confident Fatuma to now who I am, which I think I'm reaching that level of full competency, is kind of letting go of like the, you know, status quo and like how I'm supposed to do things and how I'm supposed to be like in this world and where I'm supposed to be. I get very bored very easy. So I kind of want to do everything. And I feel like ever since I entered my teens, I started doing anything I wanted in the sense of like creating and like artistically. And I think that was my outlet for the longest time. And now really chiming into like that and like fully living that, what I wanted to be living like when I was younger, and like looking at all these examples and role models that I had on like YouTube and all that, I definitely became who I wanted to be and who I wanted to see. Yeah.
Oh God, you made so many points. I don't even know where I want to start. But you mentioned being interested in photography since you were young and taking pictures when you were younger, and now you are a photographer. It's a livelihood for you now.
Yes.
And for those of you guys that have not seen her work, oh man, it's top tier. So your photography and your photography career thus far, do you ever have moments where when you are working with a client or you're doing a shoot, or you're even working on your magazine or on AOI, where you're like, okay, younger Fatuma is here with me right now? Do you ever like have those moments where you can feel her with you? Or when are the moments where she pops up and you're like, oh wait, like, we're actually doing this? And how do you react in those moments?
Honestly, I carry her everywhere. She shows up in quite literally everything I do. I feel like everything I do and I put my name next to like now is quite literally because of her, because of my younger, like she is the inspiration for like all of this. And this whole thing kind of is like, you know, allowing her to live her dream. Like this is literally her dream. So like, especially when I'm taking when I'm taking photos and I'm like editing, and the editing process, I mean, it's quite literally like the hardest part for me, actually. As of late, I've noticed that it's the hardest part for me, just because I'm doing grad season photos right now, and it's very fast paced, and it's very like a fast delivery rate, and it gets a lot. But honestly, reminding, like, my younger self reminds me that this is what I wanted to do. Like, this is a blessing. This is this is where we wanted to be. So that kind of pushes me to be like, okay, I'll accept one more client. You know, I'm closing my booking, but I'm like, someone just DM'd me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do it, because not now, then when? Like, if this is my struggle, then I am so blessed, because if my struggle is, okay, I have to edit all these photos, like, this is everything I've ever wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And it even goes in with like, recently I had like my exhibition back in January. It was our third or second annual exhibition, and so tiresome. Like, just going through that process was so crazy, because like I had to believe in myself, believe in my co-founder, and we had to really push through, right? Because it was literally us against everything, right? But then again, it was us with everything. I don't know, because the community is so like the reason why I'm here and the reason why I'm thriving, because my community believes in me. But not only my community, but my younger self, and she continues to push me, and you know, she reminds me that this is where we wanted to be. This is the struggle that we wanted, right? And this is kind of like where we are right now. And she gives me a lot of gratitude, like going through my life. Like any problem, quote unquote, that I have, it's kind of like a blessing. That's how I kind of have to push forward, right? If it's hard, I mean, that means it's just that good. So yeah, so she is my cheerleader. She continues to help me like persevere through anything, any challenge that I have, whether it's work related or not.
I love that. So again, you mentioned a lot of things I want to touch on. You know, with being an educator and a photographer and AOI, which you are the co-founder of. You know, you said that your inner child is with you all the time. And with her being with you all the time, of course, you know, we have good moments, we have bad moments, especially when it comes to our mental health. So for those moments, when those moments occur for you, how do you handle that? Like, how do you handle that as adult Fatuma? And then what is, if any, inner child work that you do to kind of get yourself through, you know, those bad mental health days?
Ooh, that is a loaded question, because I mean, I am in a constant loop of knowing what to do and not knowing a thing when it comes to my mental health. And I feel like I'm sitting here like thinking, and it's truly okay. When I have a situation and I'm having those like bad days, honestly, my mind does go to my younger child defense mechanism, and feel like really just like tapping out of anything that does not serve me at all, and realizing like what serves you and what does not is what I've been trying to do. And if it doesn't serve me, it does not serve me, and I have to like, you know, not acknowledge it. But it's been a struggle, and it's a continuous like thing that I'm learning. You know, and when it comes to my younger self, and when I say that I go to that default setting, it's kind of like my younger self, right? Not as confident, really shy, very timid about everything, and really defensive about stuff. So I think I go there when I'm stressed out, and I just kind of, you know, and I've been trying to like teach her like, hey, you're okay, and trying to create a safe space for her, because I feel like younger me didn't feel safe like mentally. So yeah, that's me right now.
When you do have those bad days and you are talking to her, it's very self-soothing. So it seems like you do a lot of self-soothing talk to your younger self, which I think is a great thing. You touched on, for you now as an adult, something that you tend to do is ask yourself, does this serve me? And then if it doesn't, that's it. You walk away, or you end it. I want to know, in your life thus far, what's been your biggest, you know, self above else moment? And I'm asking that because for me, I'm on this like mission, which sounds very simple, but I've come to learn that it's a very hard mission, and that's to like do good for our women. And so I have two questions for you. First is, what has been your biggest self above else moment? And this would be a moment where, you know, you're like, you know what, this doesn't serve me, let me walk away. It could be a moment where you caught yourself and you're like, wait, maybe I'm the problem, or I'm doing this wrong, let me figure out a better way to do this. You know, just your biggest self above else moment.
Right.
How did younger you help you get to that moment?
I mean, I feel like two things come up for me. I don't know, I guess I'll share both, but I feel like my biggest self before else moment was realizing friendships that I thought were for me were not for me. I'm a super extroverted person when it comes to friendships, when it comes to socializing. I mean, I don't have any like pre anything for anyone. So with that has been a blessing and a curse. It's more like a pouring into the people that pour into me. And if they don't, and if they're only taking from me, then it doesn't work. And when it comes to that, like the second thing that came to my mind was my collection, right? The collection is my personal brand. And for the longest time, especially like creating AOY, there was some sort of like intertwining, right? Because I'm in both of those spaces, but picking like and remind me of the phrase again.
Self above else.
Self above else was realizing that, no, I don't want it to be an intertwining thing. You know, the collection is me. Like, I started that way before I started the AOY, you know, that's kind of like my inner child and my selfishness, right? And I feel like AOY is my empathy and my, you know, caring about others before me. That's how I see her. And I love her because I love that part of myself, because I'm able to care for others. And I think that's such a like important thing that everyone needs to develop, being, you know, mindful, but also being selfish, you know, with my own brand, and like really developing her, putting more time into that is my self above else moment as well.
I love those answers. Okay, so to follow up, I want to talk a little bit about our inner child wound, the work and triggers that a lot of us live through that we're not realizing. I've been reading up on inner child work. Beginning of the episode, I mentioned how it's becoming more popular, it's becoming more normalized, which I think is a good thing, you know, because again, our past helps to create our future and our present. And so, you know, with you mentioning earlier on inner child being with you all the time, with her being with you all the time, I'm sure there are still wounds there, as there is for a lot of us. And when those moments happen, or when you find yourself like triggered, what do you do? It's like adult Fatuma is triggered, but you know, or maybe you don't know, and now that you get a moment to think about it, you realize it's not adult Fatuma that's triggered, it's younger Fatuma that's triggered, but just in an adult Fatuma's body.
Oh, that's really deep. I mean, I feel like those situations is usually when I feel like unsafe, or I feel like the room that I'm in is not meant for me. And I feel like what I definitely do, I mean, I am a definitely like person that's like a nurturing person. So I definitely like nurture my inner child. I'm not really a in the moment person, like, hey, that wasn't okay for me. I definitely like go home and I'll be in conversation with my sister and I'm like, okay, did you peep that? Or was I crazy? I definitely go through like a battle within myself. So I'll go back and forth and be like, okay, were we triggered, or are we doing too much? Or is that like how we're supposed to feel? Am I just being a lot? Like, I always go through this back and forth thing. Like, most times I am correct. Most times that wasn't okay, actually. And I should have listened to myself instead of continuing being in those environments that did not serve me, those environments that now I look crazy if I point out now, because I accepted it. And I've always gone through this battle of not being okay with something, and then, okay, forget it. It's okay. Forget and forgive. And something else happens. And then I'm like, okay, we're triggered again. Are we going to acknowledge it? Should we bring up what happened before to them as well? And it's just kind of like, now you are dramatic. Now you really played yourself in the sense of you didn't own your intuition. You did not hone into it, and you did not listen. And now you want to, you know, explain like what happened in the past, in the present. And it's very hard to go back and forth. But I think one thing for me is that's when like my spirituality comes into play. And that's when I kind of really hone into God. And like, I'm really like a person that now like forgives and like heals on my own, in the sense of I don't need to talk to you anymore. Actually, I can just like not, I don't have to acknowledge it with you anymore, right? There's something higher than me that actually can help me through this emotion that I'm going through, right? And like feeling unsafe in this situation, and just literally returning to my God and really asking for reassurance in that sense is like the best way that I do it now, because it's hard.
It's the exact same way for me, where I turn to God, and then I actually do this thing. I always say this thing to myself, which is, such is life, it be like that, we move. Like, I say that all the time, because I'm always like, is it like you said, is it really worth all of that? I'm not a forgive person. I won't forgive. I'll just pretend you don't exist anymore. Not in a oh, you don't exist, I hate you, but in a, you know what, it's not worth it. Which leads me to my last question for you, which is, which baby girl, Fatuma, needed the biggest hug? And which baby girl, Fatuma, needed the longest hug?
The biggest and the longest hug. Okay. I would say the Fatuma that needed the biggest hug, I feel like, was my 12-year-old self. I don't know. She was already told that she was an adult, so definitely 12-year-old Fatuma needed a big hug. The longest hug, right now, I think the biggest hug honestly goes to 15-year-old Fatuma. I mean, the longest hug, sorry. Because she definitely needed that hug, that longest hug. From like 15 to now, so much has happened. So I feel like if she got that hug then, it would have saved her some heartbreaks and some, self-identity issues for the long run. So 12-year-old need the biggest hug, and 15-year-old needs the longest.
From my point of view, and just from our conversation, it looks as though, and I hear it in your voice when you were answering the questions I had, everything that you're doing now, including being an educator to 7th graders, one way or another, is like a constant hug to younger you. And I love that for you personally. Our time is unfortunately up.
This is so awesome.
It's been so wonderful. All right, my girlies, tonight it's been so special. I love it. I love it so much when girls and women are able to just like talk and get real about shit that we faced or are currently facing, including talking to our inner child and taking it back to the baby girls that we used to be. Before we close out, first I of course want to say thank you to Fatuma for our first ever Talks with Say podcast guest.
Oh my God.
I just want to give you a girly late night spotlight moment where, if there's any plugs you'd like to share with the girls, let them know what's happening or what's going on with you, you're working on.
Yes. So I have 2 different platforms. So it's the Uma Collection, which will be releasing its first women's magazine June 2024. Yeah, Milwaukee magazine collection, right? So please tune into that. So my Instagram is the Uma Collection. And then AOY, oh my God, Abundance of Youth is doing so much awesome, cool things this summer. And we are opening a space in July. So please really tap into our Instagram, which is a.oy and then 3 underscores. I hope you guys, can connect and follow us.
Perfect. Again, Fatuma, thank you so much for making our time with the girlies extra special tonight. Also, by being our first ever guest.
It's been such a pleasure being on this podcast. Like, this is perfect.
And that's it for tonight's episode. If you've enjoyed this episode or you're enjoying the podcast, go ahead and tap on the subscribe button and leave me a review. You can also find me and Talks with Say on Instagram at Talks with Say. Thank you, my girlie, for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for existing. Until next time, self above else.